Okay, everybody, welcome to my presentation. It's the Wild West of Money. So what I'll be talking about is a very high-level overview of some of the scams and hijinks that happen in the space of cryptocurrency. My name's Jarrett. I'm on the YigSec Slack at Jarrett. You can also look me up. You can find all my contact details. So I'm a software developer. I've been educated at the U of A here. I've had a career in distributed storage development at Yada Yada and EMC, if some of you are familiar with that. In the last couple of years, I've been full-time in Bitcoin, doing my own entrepreneurial type things. The two things we have that I've worked on are Forkdrop and Sparkshot. And I'm also a co-founder of the Edmonton Bitcoin Association, which we run the Edmonton Bitcoin meetup. Just through knowing lots of people, having lots of conversation, getting a lot of first-hand exposure to this tech, I've picked up some knowledge that I hope to share with you today. So first of all, I like Bitcoin a lot. I'm personally invested in Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin is a very dangerous asset to be messing with. If you don't know what you're doing, people lose and gain money very fast. People panic, people get into the wrong thing, they don't secure their coins. The purpose of this talk is not to better arm you for that. I'm actually going to be talking about some of the downsides of the tech. Just be very, very careful, and I'm not the person to teach you how to prosper in this space. And I don't own any other crypto assets. That's where I'm at personally. Okay, so this talk is 3 parts. So I'm just going to give some background on the technology, kind of why it's relevant to the bsides Edmonton today. And then I got kind of 2 categories of scams I'm going to talk about. One is sort of the existing stuff that's kind of familiar, and the other stuff is the less familiar stuff that's kind of native to this new technology. Okay, so I put a bit of a Wild West theme on this talk. I kind of want to put the metaphor of the steam engine in your head. And when the steam engine was invented, it changed the way we thought about economics in the world. From the age of sailing ships to move cargo around to, all of a sudden you have this low friction device. You can move heavy cargo very quickly inland. Kind of changes the way you think about the land. It allowed America to expand into the West. And with it came just entirely new economic games and crimes and different ways. So I believe Bitcoin is of a similar type of technology. It provides a new low friction way to move money, and it really kind of reorients the way you think about things. So the invention of technology, just to boil it down, I would say it's an irreversible payment rail. So the existing banking technology, like your credit cards and PayPal and that kind of thing, it's reversible, right? There's a layer of human judgment on which transactions are legitimate or not, and that there's some external authority that can reverse a transaction should they choose. And that's just kind of the way we've done money to date. So Bitcoin gives you a very exact notion of which private keys own what Bitcoin. And I believe that's awesome. It's required for programmable money. Your computer cannot compute on ambiguous state. It has to be certain in a bits and bytes sense about whether it owns the money or whether it doesn't. And that allows stuff like micropayments and other cool stuff. So I think that's absolutely great, but that's not the point of my talk. The side effect of that is obviously bad guys can use this to enrich themselves. So they can reach across borders. So hacking groups overseas can hack North American systems and ransom them. And if the ransom is paid, they can get away with the money. So in the same way, bandits could rob a train and then ride off into the West. Bad guys get away with the money. So I believe this tech, tech doesn't get uninvented. So like any other tech, the existing world and existing systems have to catch up to it. So that's why I'm here today, to start that conversation. Okay, so is Bitcoin anonymous? So this is, of course, a bit of a source of debate. So I'm just going to give you my take on that on one slide here. So you guys probably all know it's pseudonymous by default. However, technology... Pseudonymous, like you create a handle for yourself on an internet place. It's not your real name. It's just a pseudonym, right? So that's the way the Bitcoin. Oh yeah, they'll know that. Yeah. So the technology has evolved, particularly more in recent years. So there's like stuff like the Wasabi wallet for providing coin mixing. I work on a thing called the Lightning Network with Sparkshot. It's a micropayment network. Its purpose isn't to mix coins, but it is a network, and it uses things like onion routing and a bunch of other stuff. So as a side effect of it provides very good anonymity. So as these tech gets adopted and included, it will increase the anonymous nature of Bitcoin. And again, I believe this is a good thing for the same reason. Your computer, in order to program money, your computer can't make value judgments on whether one Bitcoin was involved in a crime maybe versus another Bitcoin. It just needs to be able to treat any Bitcoin as equivalent. So there's very honest, good intentioned developers trying to make it as hardly anonymous as possible because it has the benefits. But however, we're not talking about the benefits here today. We're talking about the implications of that. So bad guys that have good OPSEC can get away with the money after they've committed a crime. Monero and Zcash inevitably comes up in this discussion. I don't think they're very interesting personally. Again, not investment advice. It's really like it's a software engineering flaw. So Bitcoin can do all these anonymous tech, but it does it at a higher level. The problem with some of these other approaches is they bake these techniques into the base level of the currency rather than at a higher level. So that commits them to certain techniques. So if those turn out to be flawed, that kind of that causes a real problem for that coin. And it also has other trade-offs. So I just believe it's a question of like superior software engineering to push the anonymous features up at a second layer like Bitcoin. And so some of those are perhaps interesting discussions, but I'm not too interested in them in general. Okay, so so to talk about scams, new things, people have been stealing money since the beginning of time, certainly before Bitcoin. So you guys have all heard of stuff of this nature, particularly with Bitcoin. It's been in the news. So I, as being involved in the Bitcoin scene in Edmonton, I'm friends with and have talked with people that run ATM companies. And I can say, for a fact, like somebody's taking advantage for a couple $100s or a couple $1,000s pretty much daily in Edmonton. Now, yeah, like the people that know how to use Bitcoin, like they use the ATMs, no problem, makes sense to them. When somebody calls the ATM support line, they, the person from the ATM company knows right away from like the sound of their voice. They're a little scared, they're confused about this Bitcoin thing. And they've more or less been a victim of one of these scams. So it's sort of the job of these companies to try to gently explain what's going on and hopefully convince them that it's not worth sending the money. So this takes a whole bunch of different forms. Of course, scammers are very, very creative. So kind of a sad version of one of those is the romance scam, and it's related to like the prince, what's the country? Nigerian prince. But yeah, more or less some guy in North America, usually a guy, not always, of course. But a certain personality type, kind of lonely, kind of looking for some excitement. They strike up a relationship with somebody overseas, and they're just asking for money. And like in a romance scam, it's a romantic relationship. They're asking for money for like a passport because they want to come visit them, asking for money for a plane ticket. Oh, they got turned away at the airport, so they need money for another plane ticket, et cetera, et cetera. So this poor person, believing this set of lies, keeps sending the Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin and sending it overseas. Also, like in Edmonton, like Epcor. So like the scammers will pretend to be Epcor, and they'll say, you haven't paid your power bill. And they'll say you need to pay it right now, or we're going to shut it down and send the police and send the bill collectors, and it'll be on your credit report. So you better pay the Bitcoin really quickly. So unfortunately, like a target demographic for these kind of things might be people that are perhaps new immigrants to Canada, where they come from a place where like getting shaken down by the authorities, like the police or something like the Canada Revenue Agency or whatever, it doesn't fail the smell test like it would somebody that's been born and raised in Canada. So yeah, it's finding sort of a weak demographic for them to scam. And yeah, these things work on a script. They keep you on the phone, keep you scared. If you hang up the phone and go think about it, obviously you're gonna likely recognize it's a scam. You're gonna talk to somebody else. So yeah, they want to keep you on the phone and they want to get your money ASAP. Also, yeah, impersonation, like if somebody takes over social media accounts or they set up a social media account that looks like a familiar person, and then they contact you, asking you, some misfortune happened, you're trapped overseas, they need $200, so send them some Bitcoin. And yeah, like techniques of like SIM swapping and that kind of thing. And you've all kind of heard of these Twitter bots that do these kind of silly scams that I guess some people fall for. So that's impersonation. Okay, this is maybe where I'm going to get a little bit controversial because there's all these coins and all these crazy ideas flying around in the space. So prior to Bitcoin, there was always things like multi-level marketing and pyramid schemes and Herbalife and Amway and all that. And there's sort of a certain script of get rich quick and kind of recruit your friends and all that going on. And a lot of those types have really moved into the cryptocurrency space as it's become a bit lucrative. So a variety of that kind of thing was also like pseudo-religious movements where there's like a messiah figure and there's like a community waiting for you, and the messiah tells you how to think about the world and dazzles you, and it's all lots of fun. But at the same time, they're emptying your bank account. And there's some sort of psychology there where these chosen people are going to be given some reward. It's just a matter of time. So it keeps people kind of strung along. Now, in sort of the altcoin space, there's similar messiah figures that to some people, like, they don't make a lot of sense. They're just kind of giving good marketing lines to people, and they're sort of cultivating this cult of personality. So people get kind of lost in these communities, and they end up emptying their bank accounts for things that might not be true. So yeah, you got to be very careful. So tying that thought back to the Wild West. So back in the Wild West, the steam engine was a very, very impressive demo, right? So you're used to like sailing ships and whatever else. And so now there's this really cool invention called a train. However, it's really loud, it's really expensive, it burns a bunch of coal, it's hard to operate. There's all these things. And you as a normal person, you missed getting rich on this huge opportunity called the steam engine, right? So there's these hucksters that went around from town to town selling these perpetual motion scams. So it'd be this crazy thing that it's a new motor, it's better than the steam engine, it runs on thin air, it's really great. They just need some investment money to bring it to market. And yeah, it'll be great, you'll get rich. So the thing missing there is like, these things violate thermodynamics, and any like steam engine engineer would, understand how thermodynamics work. So there's sort of a predatory industry taking advantage of the fact that people don't understand this, because admittedly it's very hard stuff. Right, so I think a lot of the techno-babbling that happens in this space is exactly comparable to charlatans that are selling perpetual motion to hapless investors. Okay, and so this crowd, you guys know all about ransomware. That's obviously a Bitcoin phenomenon. I feel like I don't even have to go into it. That's something I'd expect most of you are aware of and worried about. So yeah, again, that's a very blunt technique of just holding ransom on somebody. And then, yeah, if you pay them, of course, that's profitable for them to refine their techniques in doing so. Unfortunately, like in countries like Latin America, for example, but certainly elsewhere, there's sort of a culture of like kidnapping and extortion for fancy people. There's criminal gangs that have practiced the techniques for how to make that a successful business, and those guys like Bitcoin. We're fortunate; we live in a very good country. We're not really worried about that, but there's sort of an inherent relationship between threats and violence and being able to take the money and run away afterwards. Bomb threats, that's kind of a low effort thing. I mean, it's not pleasant to get a bomb threat, and they're usually not very credible, but some people pay them, so they're going to keep getting bomb threats, unfortunately. And then Bitcoin ATMs are all over towns, and they have money in them just like conventional ATMs, and there's like conventional ATM thieves that have also pivoted to stealing Bitcoin ATMs because maybe they're tied down a little less good than the regular ATMs. All of that happens. It makes the headlines. It's not good. Okay, so that's fairly conventional stuff. So I'm going to talk about some less conventional stuff. So you guys have probably all heard of these guys. So that's Mark Capellas of Mt. Gox, and this is Gerald Cotton of Quadriga, Canada's own Quadriga CX. So the reason I'm showing these guys photos is that tells you a lot. Like these are fairly young individuals when they started their company, kind of fresh-faced, enthusiastic. They didn't know what they were doing really. Nobody starting a startup really does, especially if you're young. So in the Bitcoin space, these guys started out fairly humbly, and then all of a sudden they're managing millions and millions of dollars for people, and it's an unregulated industry, and that's kind of a crazy thing. Now to talk about Quadriga, and we're still getting the facts on it, and plenty more will come out, and there's all kinds of different theories about what happened. But it is a fact that a couple years ago, Quadriga was hacked for about $16 million. So imagine being this guy running this business, you're handling millions of dollars, but all of a sudden you owe $16 million that you don't have because you got hacked. Right, so how do you respond? And particularly if you don't have any adult supervision, and this was very much the case with Mt. Gox, once you get hacked and you don't have adult supervision, what do you try to do? So in the case of Quadriga, what happened is they used the customer deposits to start trading on other exchanges. They were trying to gamble their way out of their liability, and it looks like they lost that gamble. So people lost money, and it spiraled from there. And then with Mt. Gox, they had some trading bots they were trying to manipulate the price with to try and make more money and stuff like that. And they just ended up stiffing the customer. That's what happens with these things. So be very careful when you're dealing with a Bitcoin company. A lot of them look like this, fresh-faced young people without adult supervision, and that's a recipe for things to go wrong in a lot of cases. So be very careful. So zero-conf double spends malleability. Forget the jargon for a second. The point I'm trying to make is Bitcoin bootstrapped out of nothing. It's a protocol for money that bootstrapped out of nothing. And it had lots of false starts and things that they thought would happen but didn't. So there's all these kind of weird things crufting into the Bitcoin protocol. So in 2019, it works pretty well. It's been very, very much hardened, but there are a few quirks on the edges on how it works that you have to be aware of. So when you have these fly-by-night startups that are young kids doing their startup, software, hardware engineering, it's very quick and dirty, so they might not be aware of all these quirks. And that was the case with transaction malleability. That was one of the hacks that hit Mt. Gox. That's sort of a little quirk of cryptography they weren't aware of that lost them some money. Just systems get built and configured wrong. These four gentlemen here, these were Canadian thieves. They figured out how to exploit some ATMs that were configured badly. It was the fault of the company themselves, but these guys found the flaw, and I believe they made about $60,000. I expect they've been caught by now. I don't think they realized that they were on camera, so I expect the police caught up to them. I believe this guy in the glasses was from Sherwood Park, if anybody recognizes him. But these guys stole money exploiting something like that. Okay, you guys probably know that in Bitcoin there's these things called hardware wallets. So these are special purpose-built devices to kind of separate the cryptography from more hackable general-purpose computers. So these are about $100 devices that are made at low cost. It's a competitive market. And so obviously, like every other piece of hardware, it's probably made in China. And as you know, the supply chain in China isn't the most honest at sometimes when it comes to like intellectual property and that kind of thing. So like, for example, if you have fashionable headphones that get sold for a high markup, it's been proven that they cost $50 to make, they get sold for $200. So the Chinese suppliers will figure out how to clone it and then take that markup from themselves without going through the normal channels. So that happens with hardware wallets. However, this is even more scary because the people building these wallets know damn well that people are going to be loading hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars onto these devices. So it would just make sense to backdoor these inauthentic devices with something that will steal the money. So what we have now is lots of Bitcoin on the network that's secured. It's got a security model that is based on low-cost hardware out of China. So that's a bit scary. However, aside from that, without actually owning the supply chain, you still can't attack the supply chain. So this has happened. Like these are like units that have been bought right off of Amazon. So somewhere there's a pallet of these hardware wallet devices. Somebody's taken a number of them to mess with them and then put them back, right? So security stickers, of course, stickers aren't secure. It's a silly concept, you guys know. So yeah, they're pretty easy to replace. That's been demonstrated. So what happens on some of these is the attacker will take apart the box, they will put alternate instructions into the box. So it's an authentic box, an authentic device. However, the paper instructions are different. And these instructions give them the entropy to load into the device, which obviously the attacker still owns. So here's a hapless customer has bought an authentic looking device. It is an authentic device. However, they've set it up wrong and they've lost their money. So that happens. As you guys know, there's lots of hardware white hat hackers in the hacker community. These are certainly popular devices, so these guys have had lots of fun figuring out what they can do with these devices. The unfortunate part with these hardware devices is they compete on features. So people have added a whole bunch of very convenient features to their secure device. So as you know, convenient features are just more attack surface. So they add things like touchscreens, so it can just leak your password and your PIN, and yeah, just a large attack surface. There's also this attack in the wild that's been announced. They haven't released it. They say they've reported it to the manufacturers, but it's basically, if you have access to the device, you just plug it into your USB port and take the money off of it. So then they claim that that's unfixable. Don't know the details, but that sounds like a credible thing. I expect we'll see more stuff like that. And then here's just a straight up phishing site. It's a little bit different in that this is like an alternate user interface for Trezor. So like Trezor uses the web USB connection to talk to these USB devices, and then like the UI is just in your browser, right? So here's an invalid certificate and like a fake but very legit looking interface. I believe some of this is open source, so it's really easy for them to just make a fake version. And then it just does the wrong stuff, and it makes you put your seed in it. So obviously, if you do that, you lose your money. In the App Store, like Android, iOS, lots of fake wallets get past the filters, wallets that aren't good brands, and they just straight up steal your money. So you get a wallet on your phone, you load a couple $100 on it, and it's like, oops, sorry, we lost your money, it was a bug or something. Obviously, it was just made to steal your money, and they get taken off, but after the damage has been done. And then for those of you that have used Bitcoin, you get like an address of characters, and then if you want to scan it on the phone, you need a QR code. So people will like Google, hey, I need a QR code generator for my Bitcoin. They'll get a site like this. So then they put their address in, which is just the public key. There's no danger there. However, it gives them a different QR code than the address they put in, obviously something that they own. So if they send their money to it, they lose their money. Too bad, so sad. Okay, yeah, mining malware. This is less of a thing, actually. Josh Reynolds, who's talking later this afternoon, did a talk last year at bsides on cryptocurrency malware. So I think you guys understand how this works. So if you take over a machine and you get it mining malware, the person that owns the machine gets the power bill and you get the money. So it's a way to steal electricity. If you can do it at wide scale, it can be pretty profitable. Okay, and yeah, finally here, 51% attacks. This has been in the news. I'll give a little bit of an explanation of this. So there's all these altcoins out there that mine with GPUs, and in fact, they share the algorithm that they're using to mine. And it's actually been unprofitable when the price has gone down. So there's basically these warehouses of GPU mines sitting out there that are hard for them to monetize, and they found an alternate way to monetize these warehouses. So what they do is they find an altcoin that has a low hash rate, where they have a warehouse of GPUs that can spike the hash rate. So what they do is they deposit that altcoin on an exchange. They're going to attack an exchange. They're going to deposit that altcoin on an exchange. They're going to sell it for Bitcoin. They're going to take the Bitcoin off the exchange. Now they're going to turn their warehouse to point to that coin, and they're going to undo the deposit transaction. So the result of that is they own the altcoin and they own the Bitcoin, and the exchange has lost the money. So that's a way you can monetize having hash rate. Now this seems to really only happen on altcoins. Bitcoin is much more difficult to attack this way. It might be very much impossible, depending on future economic shifts. But yeah, this is kind of an altcoin phenomenon. Okay, yeah, so to wrap up in summary, Bitcoin is new tech. I think it's awesome, but it has all these side effects that it enable bad guys to use programmable money to steal money. So yeah, not going anywhere, new challenges. I hope this is a conversation you guys can keep having. I'm happy to talk about this in the break or afterwards. And yeah, just it's a matter of old scams and new scams, and it's a constantly moving target.